All right, so I'm here with Ian Sanders, who is the co-author of Mashup, which is
Hey, Emma.
hey Ian. So why don't you tell us a little bit about the book? Because I think it's of of interest to the putty peep, certainly. And it's I'll get into how I found you in a second, but because that's sort of a funny story. But we definitely have a lot in common, and yeah, just tell us a little bit about the book.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we have a lot in common because, you might call it Puttylike and I might call it Mashup, but basically we're talking about the same
Hmm.
thing. And, for me, Mashup is unashamedly a very personal project and a very personal story. And, they kind of say, you write about what you know. And hey, this is I know this, this is a life I've been living, for the whole of my career or the whole of my life, going back to school, really, where I always had a problem, Emily, with the notion that we had to make these very fixed black or white choices, back at school about, subjects. And then as I entered my career, well, you have to be one thing.
Hmm.
And that for me never really made sense. It didn't feel natural for me. I was always struggling with that. I was always fighting against it. I always wanted to be, no, 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 but I don't know. I mean, in a way, I was like the kid in class going, yeah, yeah, but I can do that too. The trouble with that kid in class is we get a bit fed up with that kid in class after a while because they're like, put your hand down, you can't do anything. But joking apart, I think it's not about being a generalist. It's about creating a work life and a life that reflects all the different things we do. So I call it mashup. You call it about multi-potentialites and putty-like, but it's about the same thing. It's this whole notion that we don't have to have these fixed ideas about roles and jobs that we do, and that we can have many strings to our bow.
Yeah. So did you always just kind of combine your interests in your various projects and pursuits?
Yeah, I did. I think I've always been a project person,
Hmm.
and I think the thing about projects is sometimes, by wrapping up your skills and interests as a project, sometimes you can sidestep that whole thing of, well, hang on, what role are you carrying out? Because you can just say, I'm the project guy. I'm doing that project. I've worked in the creative industries mainly, TV, radio, music, marketing, digital, and I think. As I just said, I think it went back to school because I remember this, and I think I put it in the start of Mashup, which was that I know it's slightly different in the US system, but in the UK, excuse me, we had to make decisions about what subjects we were going to study. I was really interested in politics. I was also really interested in art. I couldn't take art and politics. The system said no. You know, this was even before we had algorithms that you entered it in. It went no. It was like the teacher went no, and I'm like,
Yeah.
yeah, but I love politics.
Yeah.
Why have I got to choose?
I have a similar story. When I went to CEGEP, which is this thing we have in Quebec, before I moved down here, we had to pick, it's right after high school. You're like 17 years old. And I went into visual arts because I was really into art, among other things. But I wanted to take a math class, and they wouldn't let me because I liked math in high school. But they were like, why would you want to take math? You're studying art. And I think that's just so wrong, like a 17-year-old, you know?
It's crazy. It's so flawed, and it makes me a bit angry in a way. And I have two young kids. I mean, they're only just starting out in their school education, but I feel a system that says you're good or you have a passion about a couple of things and you can't mash them up is crazy.
Mm.
So I suppose really, Emily, that by default, when I left school and I didn't go on to university straight away, I had a year out when I was taking photography class, film studies, working at a local radio station, being like a teenage DJ, working at a record shop, and I thought this is what I want to do. And we had a reunion at school, and everyone was like, well, they're very straight things. Someone, whether they were doing a fine art degree or whether they were working in banking, and it was like,
Yeah.
what's Ian doing? He's like, oh, this weird shit of all the I don't know. And in a way, go back, 20 years plus, that was setting the template really for the life I lead now,
Hmm.
which seems much more, and I'm sure you'll agree, it feels much more now. And I think there's many more of us now. You run a tribe and community of like-minded souls. There's many more that I'm connecting with. But I think, I've always struggled a bit because, even in my last day job, 12 years ago, my last proper job, there was still fighting against this label thing of Ian Sanders had to have a single label. Couldn't say, well, I do this weird mix of stuff.
Yeah, and do you find that over the years you've gotten better at combining it, so that each project doesn't feel totally distinct?
That's a very good question, and I think the honest answer is it can still be a struggle.
Mm-hmm.
I think that the book helped me kind of capture and validate for myself the process that I was going through. For instance, one of the signature pieces in the book is about finding one's unifier that wraps everything up. Yeah. And that was a key part of the journey for me, because to be honest, even in my self-employed career as a consultant and author, I rewinded 4 years and I was writing a book. I was helping out a children's illustrator I knew doing a kid's book. I was also managing a rock band, and I was working for the fashion brand Benetton. Mm-hmm. And I didn't have the confidence with Benetton, that were paying me some good money, to say, oh, by the way, I've got to leave this meeting because I've now got to go and sound check my band. I went, I've now got to go into another meeting. I didn't have the confidence to say, well, this is me, take me or leave it. And I didn't have the vision to say, actually, the fact that I'm managing an indie band at the same time as working for Benetton, there are some analogous lessons that can cross borders from one to the other. Because I don't think I saw them, Emily. I'm not going to pretend I was that smart. I wasn't. I hadn't seen them.
Right.
But now looking back, I can see those
analogies. Yeah, it's easier to see looking back.
Yeah. And the analogy was that rock band was like a startup, and we were prototyping them. We put them on stage, and were they good or were they bad? So I can see it so clearly now. Mm-hmm. So sorry, this is a long rambling answer, but I think it's taken me a while to have that confidence, to have that vision, to say, yes, I am totally confident and comfortable in my plural life. Yeah. And here we are, 2012. Took me a while, but I am.
Oh, that's cool. And so your idea of the personal unifier is similar to my idea of the overarching theme.
Okay.
I talk about that in the context of coming up with like an online business usually. So it's like, how do we find a cohesive theme that will allow you to talk about many different subjects and to do many different things. But I find that when I'm brainstorming with a student, often that overarching theme is something more personal. So it's almost like we're figuring out what drives the person. Like, what about all of these different projects? What's the common denominator there?
Yeah.
Do you have... No.
Sorry, after you.
Well, no, go ahead. What were you going to say?
Well, all I was going to say was I think you're right. And hearing you articulate that is the unifier could be about a particular value or approach. It might not be as gettable as, so my unifier is I communicate ideas. Well, that's not that original, but I kind of say, well, I communicate business ideas. But even so, that's very broad. But I like that because that's quite convenient. It allows me to do a lot of different things. I was talking to an entrepreneur last week. He is a very interesting guy, David Hyatt, and he has a denim jeans startup called Hyatt Denim. He's the curator and founder of the Do Lectures, which is like, if you haven't heard of the Do Lectures, it's like it's like TED Talks in the middle of a field. It's like 80 delegates, and you stay in tents in the middle of the Welsh countryside. It's awesome. You'd love it. You should speak there. I'll introduce you.
Oh, that would be amazing.
And he does that, and then he has a little restaurant called the 25 Mile. Everything is from 25 miles around, and says all these different things. I'm like, I interviewed David for the book. He's featured in the book. I also had a coffee with him last week, and we were reminding what his unifier was. In fact, I tweeted out earlier today. His unifier is that he likes ideas that change things. That's what motivates him. So I think I only mention that because it's like, that's back to what you were just saying. The unifier, the overarching theme, could be about the motivator or the driver. So he's interested in ideas that change things. His neighborhood, his rural, well, I say neighborhood, it was a rural setting in Wales, didn't have a great local pub restaurant doing great local food from all the produce from the local farmers. So, his restaurant, the 25 Mile, is more than just a restaurant. It's an idea, right? So it's an idea that changes things. Okay, that ticks that. Yeah. Lectures is, and the Hyatt Denim is, because he's reinvigorating a manufacturing town that used to make denim jeans, didn't in the recession, lost it, and here he is again. So I think that's, it could be different things for different people. Yeah. And in a way, the unifier, we could call it a lot of different things. And I think you and I are on the same page. Mm-hmm.
When I was reading that chapter, I was brainstorming my own stuff, and I came up with a few different possible unifiers. I think the one that I like the most is I like, well, I'm not sure how to communicate this in one like cookies, like concise sentence, but I like creating stuff at the intersections. So I like smushing things together and creating something new there.
I love that. I love that, and I love that because you know the driver for me mashing up is to reflect the real me because that's what I like. But what you've just mentioned is a really good point because at the intersection of these different disciplines and these different ideas, that is where the interesting stuff happens.
Mm-hmm.
You know, in the middle here, that is where innovation happens. That is where all these interesting, groundbreaking, game-changing ideas happen. All that stuff,
Mm-hmm.
and I think that's an awesome byproduct. Well, in fact, it's more than a byproduct of Mashup. It's the fact that and Edward Boches, I don't know if you know of Edward's work. He's at Mullen Agency in Boston, Chief Innovation Officer,
Mm-hmm.
and he did a nice little blog post off the back of Mashup talking about how creative organizations want people who are at the intersection of those of different disciplines, like you're saying.
Yeah, it's so funny listening to you speak because this is like exactly what I was talking about in my seminar last week. I was talking about how like innovation is taking ideas from one area and applying it to a totally unrelated field, and like that's where the new ideas come from. And so, which kind of gets to
Right?
how that kind of gets to how I discovered you. So I was
Yeah, let's
actually,
remind ourselves of that because sometimes we forget how we meet people in this new
yeah,
age.
this is, I wrote about this in a newsletter a couple weeks ago because it's such a good story. Um, so in the Putty tribe, I was talking about the book that I'm writing, and one of the Putty peeps sent me a message, and she's like, "Oh, I don't know if you've heard about this book, Mashup, but it looks, pretty cool and very similar to what you're doing and relevant." And I went and I saw your Amazon page, and like my heart sunk. I will admit, I was like, "Oh, this is the book that I'm writing."
Oh,
But of course,
I do feel bad about that. I do feel
yeah,
bad about
no, no problem. But it's good because, so of course, we have different voices. I have a very different voice, and what I write is going to come out sounding very different. And there are a lot of overlapping ideas, but yeah, enough differences. And like I'm going to smush in all of my other interests and backgrounds, and so like that's how multi-potentialites differentiate themselves, is by smushing in all those other interesting things. And so after that second, I was like, all right. But you know what? I'm just gonna buck up and send Ian a tweet, and this book looks really awesome, and like who knows? We're on the same team. We both care about sharing these messages. So I got in touch with you, and then you tweeted me back, and few weeks later, I found myself answering questions for a Financial Times article. So
yeah.
thank you for that. But
Cool.
this is a cool story because, there are a lot of people out there who feel like, oh, my idea's already been done. And when they find someone who's doing what they're doing, they just kind of get discouraged and silently curse that person. But I always tell people, like, first of all, it's a good sign. It means that there's interest, like, around these subjects. And, there's no such thing as competition. It's all potential partnerships. So, like,
Yeah.
reach out, make friends.
I think that's what I felt. And I felt, okay, I just had a book in the market when I was writing that piece for the Financial Times, but I thought, well, what a great gig to write. I write on entrepreneurship for the Financial Times. And it was a piece that I was writing about the mashup, and I couldn't be as self-indulgent to interview myself. So when I had the opportunity, I thought, Emilie. So that's what I love about this.
Yeah.
I thought we'd, because it all kind of blurs. I thought we'd connected because, Tina Roth Eisenberg, Swiss Miss.
Yeah.
Because she had done a little blog post and tweeted out my video about Mashup, and I thought there'd been some engagement there and blah blah blah. So it just shows you I remembered it wrong.
Okay.
But I think that's the thing. I thought, I felt, okay, how exciting it was. There's someone out there with this similar views, and I've met quite a few people like that. But I was particularly taken by, you felt like this was a very, you'd been thinking about this for a long time. You had this very well established brand and this site and the multi-potentialite thing. I must admit, in my first draft, when I sent that to my Financial Times editor, they were like, multi-potentialite, and I put a heavy annotation, please explain what that means. I was like, come on, multi-potentialite. But I think you had some neat language around it as well.
Yeah, that was so cool. I thought maybe like I was like, okay, I got to sound, it's the Financial Times, I thought maybe I'd come off a little bit too goofy for them, but it worked out. They just
No, they loved it. They loved it, and I think in anything I write, I mean, it's a bit of a side point, but I always want a plurality of voices
mm-hmm.
and a plurality of geographies, and I always feature people from the US, so it's great to have someone from Portland, Oregon, and again, I think what I enjoy in that process, and it's slightly different talking about Mashup, but what I enjoy in that process is you have all those plurality of voices, and you do those interviews, sometimes doing them on email, sometimes doing them on Skype, sometimes doing them on the phone, sometimes doing them face to face, and then I kind of stand back and I connect the dots. And that's the interesting bit, because I think that's a bit like what you were talking about, Emily, about the intersection. You know, that bit where you stand back and go, okay, connect the dots. Right, this is interesting. So Emily's saying that, Edward Boches is saying this, and bringing it all together, you know.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's why it's so cool reading your book and listening to you talk, because it's like, I've thought about these ideas so much, and so have you, but like, you a whole different, you come at it from a different angle, and it's very interesting to hear these ideas reflected in someone else's language too.
Yeah, no, sure.
Mm-hmm.
But you know what? I think, the frustrating thing sometimes about traditional publishing is, this book was finished on February the 10th. Its official US launch date, October 28th. That's a long time. And even on the Kindle version, you still have that long period of, gestation. And it's frustrating as a writer, because it won't surprise you to hear that if I was going to write this now, it would be quite different.
Yep.
It would be better, because I've learned a lot since I finished it, because I've continued having conversations with all these people, like you, like Edward, like all these people. And it would be a different piece. So, if you're writing something now, that's great, because, I don't want to shoot myself in the foot, but in 12 months' time, this will be an old book. And 12 months' time, you'll have a book in the market. That'll be the go-to book for the plural workers.
Right. Cool. Thanks for saying that. I mean, it's definitely true. Like, and the other frustrating things happen. Like, you finish a project, and then if there's like a lag time, sometimes you want to jump into something new, and then you need to talk about old ideas again in the future. And so it's like, but it's all good. So what are some of your multiple projects? Like, what are some of your gigs that you've got going on?
So for me personally, so my main kind of hats I wear, so that I'm an author. This book behind me was my second book, Juggle, which was kind of daughter of Mashup, because I was exploring some of those ideas. I'm currently starting work on my fifth book, so which is a collaboration, which will be out in 2013.
What's your new book about? I'm just curious.
It's kind of more of a general book, really, about kind of everything that I've learned about setting up a business in this very kind of agile way. So not traditional business planning, but just kind of a very, if you have a business idea, how quickly you can launch it and test it and rest of it. So,
awesome.
One thing I'm passionate about is hearing business stories and telling business stories. So, that's one reason I do the Financial Times gig. I'm not a journalist. I'm a writer who writes about business, and I write about things that I'm passionate about. So I write for the Financial Times quite a few times a month, sometimes once a week, on entrepreneurship and business. I also do some reports for Monocle magazine, Monocle Radio, which is an online radio station around global thing, and then I also advise some small businesses and some bigger businesses kind of marketing. And one area that I've been doing a lot of work on is helping business leaders with what I call thought leadership marketing, i.e., getting their ideas out there, capturing them in blog posts and social media and marketing content. So I guess it's all about communicating ideas.
Yeah, I was just going to say that, communicating ideas. Yeah. That's super cool. So I want to ask you a question that someone asked me at my seminar last week, and okay. I'm very curious about your take on this. So what do you say when someone asks, I'm up for this job, I'm up for this gig, how do I compete with the specialists who have spent like so many more years doing this one thing, and how do I compete with them?
I think it's a tough one, and I think part of it is what I think we're both saying. Well, I don't want to put words into your mouth, but the Mashup life is not about a shallow generalist of of all this breadth. A useful way of thinking about it is what Tim Brown, founder of IDEO, said in a great Fast Company blog post that's worth checking out from 2005, when he talked about T-shaped people. Mm-hmm. So T-shaped person has this specialism in the vertical, and they have all this empathetic disciplines in this horizontal. So my depth here could be marketing, it could be small business, could be a writer. But,
right. I've got I think there are a few of them. Like.
Okay, so in fact it's E-shape.
Yeah.
Right. Or M. Yeah, M or E. Sure. Yeah, it's not T, or is it? And I think that you can bring some depth to a role. I think that specific question about competing with someone really is going to rely on the vision of the hirer, that they think, I want someone that talks all these different languages, not literally. I want someone that's so multilingual and multiple. And I had an engagement with a guy on Twitter who said, come on, where are these people? Because I'm trying to get a job. I think he was out of New York, and he was like, where are these companies? And I kind of said IDEO, and he kind of quite rightly kind of laughed in my face a bit, went, oh, don't say IDEO, the poster child of T-shaped people, give me some real examples. And I think, smaller businesses, small organizations, some more progressive ones, especially creative industries, are looking for these people. But even now, I think we are pioneers. So it's difficult sometimes competing with someone that says, hey, I live and breathe that 24/7. Mm-hmm. And you're competing with someone that says, well, I can do that, but I could do it as one of 6 things. But maybe it's about back to your at the intersection. Because I will bring all these other learnings in, I will do the role better, and I will be much more innovative. Because when it comes to problem solving, I won't think, oh, I'm just going to think about this as a engineer. I'm going to think about it as an engineer / anthropologist / photographer. Mm-hmm. And maybe be like, that's where the light bulb will come.
Yeah, I also really liked what you wrote about when you were saying how sometimes it takes listening and trying to figure out what their vision is and what their goals are and what they're going for. And if you can articulate, not like, instead of listing off like 20 different things that you can do, just being like, okay, this is what you want, this is what I can do for you, and this is how I'm going to do it.
Yeah, I think that's a good way. And that's something I've always done, but I also nicked it from this guy who used to write for the Financial Times as well, and he had he's a kind of motivational speaker and consultant, and he also has a kind of like 70s glam rock tribute band. So he would always go and do that listening, and then he'd say, if he was just trying to engage with someone, not even sell them something, they'd go, oh, I love T-Rex, or I love the Stones, and he'd go, oh, music, blah blah blah. So, mm-hmm. And then, they'd go, oh, well, our organisation is really stark and it's dull, and we need to. And he'd go, oh, well, I talked about motivational speaking, So, mm-hmm. I think it's a classic salesperson's. I don't mean that too predatory wise, but I think it's a classic salesperson's thing. Have a listen, and then go, oh, okay, This is what you're interested in from my toolbox.
Yeah, because people care about themselves, and so if you can get them talking about, and if you as like them as the client, you want to give them what they want. It's the whole benefits versus features thing, I think.
Yeah, absolutely.
But cool. And do you think that multi-potentialites, or what do you call them, mashers? Yeah. Do you think that mashers can stand out in the job market by bringing in their other interests? Like, do you think that's a strategic advantage?
Yes, absolutely. The trick is to, if people have got all those different skills, how to make them sticky, how to make them stick out, I think is all about telling one story and having a good story to tell, because stories are gettable. And I don't know, maybe when I was talking about my Benetton / children's book / rock band, that's like, okay, that's quite an interesting story that says something. Maybe when I was talking about David Hyatt and his restaurant / do lectures / jeans company, it's like, it's ideas that change things. I think having a story, knitting it all together with a story, is the only way to do it. Otherwise, we just become like a to-do list or shopping list. Like, oh yeah, I can do 17 Let me give you a rundown of them. It's like, what? You know. But I think it's like, um, a lot of things that I've done in my life have been like a lot of us, so kind of serendipity and bumped into opportunity on Twitter and this and the other, and there's no great story, there's no great plan, but sometimes you get an interesting story because of those things. And I think those stories can make you distinctive and make you stand out.
Yeah, I've also found that a lot of multi-potentialites have the kind of show don't tell thing going on. Like,
right,
the resume is sort of, it feels like it's kind of from the past, and I always encourage people to get out there and start building stuff now. Start, like, don't, if you want to write for the New York Times, don't wait for the New York Times to hire you. Start writing, start doing the work that you would do for them. Publish it on a blog.
Yeah.
So I think it really takes a self-starter mentality and kind of this proactive thing. Even if you're out there like looking for a more traditional job, trying to appeal to companies and stuff. Have you found that? Have you found that?
Yeah, it's totally about the mindset of the person, because I think, as you say, if you're stuck in a 9 to 5, 9 to 7 and hating it and thinking this isn't me and I can't change it because I can't afford, I have the rent to pay and I can't afford to ditch that to do something I really want to do, then there are ways of doing things around the edges. There are ways of doing side projects. I talked in the book about Michael Mentesi, this guy that I met, came along to a book signing I was doing, a previous book. And he had an ideas club at work where they sat around at lunchtime. Didn't have an incredibly demanding job, he had a lunch hour and they sat in the canteen or wherever they sat in a coffee shop and they said, oh, let's develop some ideas. So, I think there's a lot of ways of doing those things.
Yeah, that's so cool, an ideas club. Like, everyone should just start doing that. Like,
yeah. What an awesome thing. And they're going, okay, what should we do? So when I met him, I said, what ideas are you developing? He went, well, we've got 2. One is baking croissants. I went, right. He said, the other is an iPhone app. I thought, okay, one very analog, one very digital. And, why not? That was a weird mix of things. But it was like, I said, are the same people working on both? Now, as it happened, he had a real passion for baking and he was kind of leading that more. But that was where it came from, the Ideas Club. And I think, just to close that whole thing off, I think it is all about mindset. It is all about doing, of course. It's all about the execution, because, if you have people who go, oh, I'd love to really do what you're doing, do all those different things, like you just said about the New York Times thing, they've just got to start doing it. And there are opportunities to do those things in your spare time. And people think they're very time poor, but, switch off the TV and start blogging and start writing and start doing what you really want to do.
Mm-hmm. Do you think resumes are kind of antiquated, or do you think so?
Yeah, when I advise people, I really say, ditch the resume. And they're like, yeah, but it says send your resume. And I think, I use it, but I struggle enough with LinkedIn, don't you? The categories of I
don't even use that shit.
what I do and fitting in those different boxes. So, have a one-page story, have a one-pager that's, beautifully written that says all the different things you do. Or, you might not agree with me on this, and I know quite a few people I know do not agree with me on this, but you know what I feel? Just look at my Twitter. Mm-hmm. Look at my Twitter over the last 24 hours, and in fact, I haven't tweeted much today. But look at one's Twitter over the last, whatever time frame, and you'll see tweets about what I was cooking for Sunday lunch. You'll see tweets about me having great coffee. So you'll have all that stuff, and then you'll have, here's some really great links, and you'll understand a lot about me. And people go, yeah, but do we really want to know about the Ian Sanders having coffee thing? And I'm like, well, that's me. I'm not going to not tweet about that. I love my coffee. I'm passionate about my daily espresso. So an employer will get to know a lot about me by looking at my Twitter, because they'll get the real me.
Yeah, and you want an employer who wants you for you, not for one skill that you can perform. That will. So
I think kill the resume. And I'm not suggesting one applies for a job by just saying, "Hey, check out my Twitter," but use. In fact, this is so funny because I've seen this under a bunch. I've been clearing out this is so old. It was a scan of something I did on the back of a napkin of all my different stuff, You know, so maybe like a bit of visual note taking, a bit of a doodle that says, "God, that's wow." Oh, there's different unifier then. That was a long time ago, but that was oh look, loads of coffee cups. See,
Oh,
that
cool.
was that was loads of photographs of coffee cups. I love photography. That was yeah, maybe that's a different way of, you know, maybe it's like you do an infographic or you do a thing, you know, if you're not, you get a design friend or pay them $50, say, oh, can you just knock up a little infographic for me of all the different stuff I do, and
Yeah.
it's gettable. It's got to be gettable. You know, if you're going to compete in the job market, you can't just go in and say, hey, you know what, I'm not going to apply for this at all. But if you have a coffee with me, you'll find out I'm an awesome person. You know, we can't live in a world like that, unfortunately. But you could. There's a lot of digital communications or analog things captured digitally that could communicate, you know, who you are.
Yeah. Do you think the personal unifier has a lot to do with that? I mean, if you can kind of, they go to your website and it's like there's all this
Yeah.
stuff that you're doing, but it feels cohesive because it makes sense under
Yeah.
this theme.
Yeah, I think the onus is on the individual to use their unifier or overarching theme and use that as their signature and shout about it. Do not be enigmatic about it. Do not be like, yeah, well, you know, if you really get to know me, I'll tell you about it. Put it out there. Put it out there and use it as a signature. You know, it's very clear in the first 10 seconds of visiting your website what you're about and what multi-potentialites are about and who you are as a person. That's very, very clear. And it needs to be as clear for everyone. And sometimes people might feel they have more of a gettable proposition than others. But that is the unifier. You know, I could have a strapline, Ian Sanders Company, communicating business ideas. That's an easy one. That's a no-brainer because it's a very gettable unifier.
Yeah.
You know, ideas that change things again. But I think put it out there in neon. You know, this is me.
Yeah.
Put it on your Twitter bio. Take the URL, you know, make ideas that change things.com, you know, just soak it up.
Yeah, totally. And so many multi-potentialites are just like, they're almost embarrassed about all the, I hate that. I hate that like shame. Like I've got to hide all the different sides of myself. No, you need to feature it. Like that's where the opportunities come from.
But you know, that was me, as I said.
Yes,
that
me
was
too.
me.
Yeah.
With the book, the kids' book, the brigade, the band, and the thing. It was like, yeah, I was like, well, had my head down about it, you know, didn't feel good. Well, no, I felt good about it inside, but I was putting a mask on to a client.
Yeah. Isn't it fun now? Now when you just like lead with it, you're like, yeah.
Because this is just, you know, this is just me, you know. And yeah, it's much easier.
Do you have any tips for people to help them find their personal unifiers?
Well, I think, you know, it's about standing back. Because sometimes it's not going to be that clear. We have created work lives for a lot of us that we've kind of just got into not by default, we've just kind of fallen into, and it's like, well, what are we doing that for? And by its very nature, if you're one person, freelancer, solo entrepreneur, whatever you want to call it, it's very difficult sometimes to stand back. So my advice, I was talking to someone on Skype about this earlier in the week, end of last week, is to ask people around you who know you well. Ask your partner, ask your friends. Sometimes they might have a better idea, you know. So the guy I was talking to was Richard, who's a copywriter, and I kind of thought, well, his unifier is just going to be about, I mean, he's just a copywriter and he trains copywriting. But in fact, he had asked his wife what he was good at. And she said he was very good at listening and that he was very good at getting on with people. So rather than go with the obvious one, I copyright and I train people in copywriting. He said he was very good at listening and very good at getting on with people. Now, not everyone, people might say that, but then not everyone is necessarily that good at those skills. So those soft skills, I don't think they're soft, but people call them soft. Those soft skills about listening and getting on well with different people, I think is a great business skill to offer. So wrapping that up, the listeningcopywriter.com, but that .com is available. Quick take. You know, I thought I was impressed by that. So he said, I took your advice, Ian, and I asked Hazel, his wife, and Hazel said, you're really good at listening, Rich. And he said, what? No, he didn't really. That's a terrible joke. So yeah, ask people around you.
Okay, ask people around you. Good tip. Great. So where can people find you if they want to learn more?
It's very simple. It's iansanders.com. Ian Sanders on Twitter.
Yeah, check out his Twitter feed. Last 24 hours, you'll get to know everything about him.
Yeah, very, very little. And yeah, that's all you need to know, I think.
Cool. And your book is out in the States next week?
Not sure when this is airing, but it's out. Yeah, beginning of next week in the US.
It's October.
Well, it's I got it down as October 28th, but that's Sunday, so I think it's October 29th.
Okay, cool, cool. Awesome. Yeah, everyone should definitely check this book out. I enjoyed it. I blasted right through it, and I don't usually finish books, and I didn't just finish it for this interview. I actually, like, I was just captivated. I was like, oh man, these are such interesting ideas, and not just because they're mine. They're also like, he was coming at these things that I've thought about from such a different angle, and it was just really neat to see someone else talk about this stuff and how to make it work and how to smush together your interests. I use the word smush a lot. That's kind of my version of mashup, I guess.
Great. Well, thanks for checking it out. Thanks for all your support.
Yeah, thank you.